when you were in an argument, the goal should not be just to be right. The goal is to work through things together and not have to have that hard-headed, closed-minded stuff. I'm Rhett.
And I'm Brandon.
And we're the House Dads. Because we're dads who sell houses.
But we're also husbands, business owners, sports freaks, Christians,
friends, marketing nerds, TV show bingers, and so many more things.
Like so many of you, we're just trying to do it all. We're trying to do it well.
And that's what we're here to talk about. Welcome back, everybody. Episode 35. We got a little sweat going on, not just because it's 116 degrees outside. Well, I'm not really sweating that much, but we had a little incident before this.
We will stop at nothing to bring you your House Dads content. We came in and dropped some stuff off, went back out to the car, and then the door was locked to get back into the shooting room.
Yeah, I walked in and I see Brandon like popping a squat on the floor, and he peeks around the corner. I was like, what's up?
What is going on?
He's like, well, I locked ourselves out of the room.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I guess the door has never been shut in here, and if it's shut, it's locked. And so we just completely took off the handle, and then still didn't work. It was still locked, and so Caden just Hercules and busted the door down. So we're just gonna
Every other door in this hallway is like a nice fragile wooden door. This door seems to be like taken straight from Angola.
To keep people in.
Yes.
And you certainly can't get out.
But hey, we're here. We're doing it. We're set up.
Yes.
Sweat is okay. Everybody else in this city is sweating as
That's
well.
right.
But we have a really, it's a fun topic. They're all fun. But this one's, we're trying different topics.
Right.
And this one's a good one.
Yeah, and it applies to everybody.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about marriage. And you say, well, how does that apply to me? I'm not married. Well, hopefully one day maybe you get married, right? And even if not, we're going to be talking about the complexities, the challenges, the difficulties, but also the awesome stuff that comes through marriage. And so whether you are married or currently want to get married one day, I hope this episode, what we want to do is just kind of give you some practical tips on how to improve your marriage, but then also challenge you to put in more work and to think differently about maybe some of the ways that you've been thinking about your marriage and what you should get out of it and what you should put into it.
Yeah.
This season of life, Courtney and I are blessed to be able to, and it's one of the biggest blessings of our life. I really, truly mean this, to be able to officiate and do marriage counseling for a lot of different couples.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's college.
Pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. College young adult pastors, that's natural, right, during that season of life. And it's really, really cool to do. And, we don't take it lightly at all. Yeah. There's been only two. Out of two, I wish I could go back and count. I mean, I could go back and count, I guess, but I should have done this before. It's bad planning.
5.
But to see how many weddings we have officiated, but 2 of those, when we sat down for marriage counseling, by the second time we sat down for marriage counseling, they decided not to move forward with the wedding.
Oh, yeah. So you talked them out of it.
Kind of, and it wasn't necessarily, I think that they probably, with or without us, they maybe would have figured that out. But I hate to, I'm sad about it, but then I'm not.
Yeah.
Because we got down to some stuff where it's like, man, y'all really need to think about this more before you make this commitment.
For sure.
And, I'm thankful for my good friend, Jonathan. And, Jonathan and I went to high school together and we're close then. But then after high school, grew apart and we didn't talk for like 6 years. And Jonathan built your house.
I texted him before this. He hasn't texted me back yet.
Yeah, no surprise. But anyway, Jonathan reached out to me after like 6 years of not talking and was like, hey, man, will you officiate my wedding? I was like, bro, I didn't talk to you in like 6 years, right?
Good to see you again.
Yeah, exactly. Good to see you. And, who he was engaged to at the time was a childhood friend, Rachel, but her and I hadn't talked in more years than even me and Jonathan. And so I thought about it for a while, talked with Courtney about it, and I'd been helping at the church and stuff, but wasn't ordained or anything. So went through that process, and I was like, all right, let's do this. Yeah. And so the marriage counseling then consisted of one dinner at Walk-Ons. And I was like, hey, y'all want to get married? They're like, yep. Like, all right, let's do it.
Let's get some cheese fries.
Yeah, I mean, it was like not really in depth, and it was just because I didn't know what we were doing. Yeah. And then over the last several years, Courtney and I, with the help of others and by officiating and counseling people, once they got married, kind of hit on like the hot topics and found out what does give people the most trouble, what people most have to walk through.
Right.
And so then we developed a really in-depth marriage counseling I guess you'd almost say curriculum, but we meet 4 times with our couples before we get into it. And so what we're going to be talking about today is some of the stuff we talked about in those marriage counseling.
Love it.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about getting married and you want to know what counseling is like, these are kind of things.
Yeah.
If you want to take Brandon's curriculum,
that's right.
Marriage 101.
Yes.
You'll get to see some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah. Weddings bring out so many awkward situations. Like
for
people
sure.
that they're choosing their groomsmen. They're choosing rekindling old relationships.
Right.
But a friend of mine got asked he got a random Facebook message, and they asked, it was a guy he hadn't talked to since high school years ago. And he asked him through Facebook DM to be his best man.
Oh, wow.
He was like, what?
That's rough.
I don't know. I think he ended up making an excuse, or maybe he was honest with hey, man, I
feel like I wouldn't do good at that role,
maybe
man.
you haven't made any more friends, but I don't know you. But
that's cool.
But either way, it made me think of a story from our wedding, and it was not funny at the time. It's a great story now.
Now you can laugh about it.
We had a DJ. Obviously, we paid for a DJ. He gets there probably about 2 hours before the wedding.
Right.
And we have an outside wedding.
Yeah.
So with music, and as you see with the equipment we have here, you got to think about plugging stuff in and where to do it. So the one outlet we had for him, it was in my parents' backyard. It was like acreage. It was not a grounded outlet, and he was not happy about that.
Okay.
So, and Brandy's uncle, he was not happy that he was not happy about that.
Gotcha.
So got into it a little bit.
Little tussle?
The DJ just said, you know what? I'm out.
You're kidding.
He packed up his stuff, left 2 hours before the wedding.
Oh my gosh, poor Brandy.
And she didn't know.
She didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, so the goal was like, all right, we got 2 hours to find a DJ. So the wedding coordinator at the time texted basically every DJ she knew of.
Yeah.
I think at one point there were like 3 on the way.
Yeah.
Some guy comes in clutch, pulls up
Nice.
probably 15 minutes before.
You remember who it was?
No.
Nope, not sure.
No, it was
I wonder if it was my boy DJ Brandon Hayes. Shout out.
It was not him.
It wasn't
It was
Brandon
not
Hayes.
him.
Okay.
But yeah, afterward, like during the reception, Brandon's like, who is that DJ? I was like, I'll tell you later. But it was she didn't know anything about it. Everything worked out. But yeah, those wedding days.
Dude, we had I'll never forget, kind of a similar story. Was not funny at the time. It's funny now. But we, in the middle of cutting our cake, we did a cupcake tower, but we had a little cake for us to cut. I had noticed some faces that came in the reception that I was like, you weren't invited. You weren't invited. You weren't invited. People that we knew, but we had some wedding crashers. And I'm like, man, I hope this doesn't, hit our number and stuff like that. Look, our wedding coordinator came up while we were cutting the cake and whispered in Courtney and our, how do you say that grammatically? Whispered in our ear, right? And said, hey, you're 29 people over. Oh. And I'm starting to do that math in my head, and I'm like, I ain't got that kind of money, dude. And I mean, in the timing, man, of delivering that message.
Wait till I take a bite.
Yeah, for real. But, we can talk about this after, but anyway, Dad came in clutch and took care of us.
Nice.
So,
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, weddings are, they bring a lot of cool stories now.
Yes.
Stress
In the time.
stuff. So it's funny because weddings, they're supposed to be the catalyst for your marriage.
Right.
People put so much emphasis on the wedding. They don't talk about the marriage. Well, we should be, and some people do, but
That's right.
we don't think about the marriage afterwards, right?
Yes, right.
And you hear it so often, the stats. Like we're going to say the stat, and you're going to be like, yeah, I heard that. And it's even become a joke at this point of like, well, I'll just say it. According to the American Psychological Association, approximately 50% of marriages end in divorce, which is extremely sad. But you've heard it so much that like people even make jokes of it, like, well, which one's going to last,
Exactly.
me or you? It's like, well,
half time.
that's not very funny.
Yeah, it's not.
So 50% of first marriages end in divorce. Those who wed multiple times, of course, a lot of people remarry. They face even a higher rate. That's 67% of second marriages end in divorce, and 73% of third marriages past that. So I think people get a little, honestly, they're a little numb to it probably.
Yeah,
like,
I guess
all
so.
right, it's
They're
not a
like,
big
well, I've
deal
done it
after the first
before.
one.
Yeah, and I guess those people in their third marriages, it's like, maybe the
Yeah.
common denominator. No, but sorry, there's probably some good people out there. But the more odds, the more times you do it, the more odds.
But it's sad. It's sad to
happen.
hear. It's a high statistic.
It really is, and it is becoming just more increasingly like just accepted and okay. And we're going to get into it more, where there's obviously a lot of reasons and times and things that have happened that totally justify divorce, and we'll get to that later. But it's an interesting stat too that most divorces happen between the 3 and the 7 year mark. Yeah. Right. And you hear people talk about like the 3-year itch or the 5-year itch or the 7-year itch, or where you're like, okay, the honeymoon phase is wearing off. And man, we've talked about this in other episodes of what not to say. And we're going to be, you've heard some of the things of what not to say before, is that like, it doesn't have to get worse.
Yeah.
Like, man, I'm so thankful in my marriage that it's only gotten better.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we haven't been through a lot of difficult times,
Right.
a lot of hard times. It hadn't always been easy, but I love her so much more now than I did then.
Yeah, you don't think about those hard times when you're getting married and
Right.
engaged. You're like, one of you is going to lose a loved one. You're going to have to go through some heartbreak.
Yeah.
Just parenting,
Right.
friendships. Like, you don't think about those things
Yeah.
while during counseling, you may bring those things up, but
Yeah.
like you go through those things together. And
Yeah.
that's when things get hard. And, that's just what kind of makes or breaks some people.
Yeah. I think it's another interesting stat, and this last one we have, is that only 4% of couples divorce after being married for 10 years or longer. So it's like you hit that 10-year mark. It's like, but, I think unfortunately, and I don't mean to downplay that, like I think that's a huge accomplishment and a big achievement, but I think after 10 years with somebody, even if things are unhealthy, some people just stay stuck.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not growing. They're not really working on their marriage. There's no point where we just put it on cruise control and it's like, oh, the marriage is taken care of.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's plagued marriages and kind of increased the number of divorces over time, is that we just glorify that marriage is all about this feeling.
Yeah.
Right? Like Courtney and our favorite type of movie to watch is rom-coms. We love them. Right?
Y'all's favorite or her favorite?
Together,
like
it's our
those movies?
favorite. I
Say
do.
it out
We
loud.
have a good time. I do like rom-coms, okay? But we have fun, man.
They're
And we have fun watching them, but it's not real life.
No.
It's not real life. And we fall in love with this idea of like this meet cute, like, oh, you're going to meet this special way and all this different stuff. And
You're going to feel that feeling. You're going
That's
to
right.
know it's the one
You're
as
gonna
soon
know
as you
it's the
see
one.
them.
you're going to find your soulmate. And that's the biggest lie, man, that Hollywood sells us, that it just feels good all the time and it's just easy. And then they sell us this idea of, and they lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
Man, even from Disney, you know, for princesses in the movies that are classics, it's like, oh, well, the Beauty and the Beast, they're good.
Yeah.
Like, man, I don't know. I want to see the after.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's see
like,
how they're working.
After the final rose, Beauty and the Beast, right? Like, or did they keep working on their marriage? Like, how did that go? But it's never happily ever after. It takes work. Marriages take work. And that's not a bad thing, because anything that's good in life takes work, right? And, you know, we're going to get into, like I said, some of the things that we do in marriage counseling and a few attitudes that I think you have to take on to have a successful marriage. And I think the cornerstone of any successful marriage, and this is my opinion, is that it's got to be based on Christian principles, right? Keeping Christ at the center of your marriage, you know, because I believe that marriage was instituted by God and that it was by following his model and his design that we can have successful marriages. But I think no matter what, if we implement these four attitudes, you know, in our relationships and in our marriages, that it's going to allow us to have healthier relationships. It's going to allow us not to just receive better, but to give better love and to really stay committed to our spouses.
Yep. For sure.
So the first attitude is this, and this is a big one that I'm still working on and still having to learn a lot myself, but it's this. It's that your burden is my burden. And what that means is that, like, we have to share the needs and the wants of our spouse as if they were our own.
Yeah.
Right? This is really critical to having a healthy marriage, and it was hard for me early on in our marriage. I don't know why I wasn't aware of the fact that, like, Courtney's needs are way different than mine. Mm-hmm. Right? Even with, like, simple things of, like, being alone.
Right.
Right? Like, early in our marriage, like, I still wanted to have everybody over for every game and everything and all these different things, and Courtney needed to be alone. She wanted time with just me. And so, you know, sharing each other's burdens is all about selflessness.
Yeah.
You know, it's about taking on an attitude that, this is the key, taking on an attitude that even though it's not super important to me, if it's important to you, it's going to be important to me.
Absolutely. And, like, you know, you think about it, whatever age you get married, 25, 26, earlier or later, that many years goes by with you really only taking care of yourself. Like, even something as simple as, and this is still something with us, like, what do you want for dinner? I was just going to stop and get this. Oh, what about me? Like,
Right.
you know, like, you gotta just
Right.
little things. You've grown up worrying about you. That's it. But now when you're married, your burden is their burden.
Yeah.
You know?
It hit
And
me
vice
so
versa.
quickly the first day we got back from our honeymoon, and this is what, 9 years ago now. And like the first day we got back, we were spending money however we were on a honeymoon, but then when you get home, and I remember going off and going to work, and then I got a little notification on our banking app that it was like X amount of dollars spent at Walmart. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how can you spend that much money at Walmart? And she's like, well, I'm going to be cooking dinner and I'm going to be doing things for the house and all this stuff. Before it was a bachelor pad, man.
Yeah.
It's like we
You
had
don't
like
need
Hot
clean.
Pockets and pepperoni.
Cook.
I mean, like pepperoni pizzas and that's it,
Yeah.
you know? So that's a funny way to look at it. But what's even more important is like when Courtney's struggling with something or something matters to her, that I'm like, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Get over it. In my head, I cannot take that approach that if it matters to her, it's got to matter to
absolutely.
me too.
That's something, if you're listening to this, we may have already had the baby, but as of this recording,
crazy.
Randy is very close to popping.
Wow.
And like, I'm not gonna say it's a burden to be pregnant, but
Sure.
like the things that you feel, she's in that miserable stage of like, get this baby out. And I can't do anything, you know, but I feel the pain and I'm like, it's hard to be like, hey, all right, that's kind of your deal. I'm going to go over here and do this. Like, no, like I'm feeling that with her.
Yeah, I'm feeling that right now too. This will be public knowledge at this point too. That Courtney is pregnant.
Nice.
Yeah, and so it's the same. She's got motion sickness, morning sickness.
Yeah.
So bad, worse than any other pregnancy we've had, and you feel helpless where you just like, I can't really do anything, but I can share that burden with her at the very least.
For sure.
Like I'm not like, well, I can't do anything about it, so next. So whatever it is in your relationship, especially if you're married, you're probably thinking of something in your mind right now that you've kind of neglected about your partner and been like, oh, that's a big deal to them, but not to me. Make it a big deal.
Yeah.
If it's a big deal to them, make it a big deal to you
For
too.
sure. Yeah, going into the second principle, I will always be honest with you. And that sounds very self-explanatory. It sounds easy, right? Which, you know, it
Can be.
It can be, but there's also little things that you have the opportunity to not be honest about. But the principle we want you to get, it counts. All things, big, small. Honesty is key. The big lies or issues with honesty, it's obvious. Like 34% of divorces in 2022 were filed with a cause of infidelity. Not to get real deep on you guys, but like that is a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest lies you can commit. And I was listening to a podcast not long ago talking about kind of that topic, and they said that like nobody ever just instantly decides, you know what, I'm going to be unfaithful to my wife or to my husband.
Right.
It's literally a series and a pattern of little lies that lead up to that one big thing.
It's a slow fade.
And it's like, man, like if you catch it in the beginning and have this mindset and this principle rooted in you that you will always be honest, that's not gonna be as much of a worry, you know. Another leading cause for divorces are financial issues, like issues with money. It depends on how you were brought up. And maybe they were brought up differently to have separate bank accounts, and now you're wanting one, and now maybe you make more money, they make less money, and you want to spend, you know, there needs to be this open line of communication and honesty with finances, because believe it or not, that is a huge reason. Is there a stat here for that? No.
It's a huge deal.
But
No,
anyway,
it's one of
the
the biggest cause. Yeah.
second reasons to do it. So to prevent those, you know, those things and other things that can lead to we have to make honesty in our marriage like a priority, even if it's the smallest thing. Brandy is, she is the type where I say, hey, I'm going to be home at 5. I better be home.
You better
at 5.
be home for 5. You say
I'm
that.
home at 5:02.
Yeah.
I thought you said 5. I was like,
Yes, man.
so now I've learned to, hey, my goal is to be there at 5, and this falls into that a little bit, but like just being honest, because sometimes I want to say I'll be home like just to make her happy, but being honest, like, hey, I'll be honest, I'm gonna have a late day today. I'm gonna be home a little later.
Yeah,
you know.
Dude,
but being honest,
it matters so much. If you're faithful in the small things, you'll be faithful with the big things. And I think for some of you, it may be like, wait, how do you put infidelity and finances in the same thing?
Right.
A lot of it comes down from a lack of transparency in our marriage. You know, one of the things that we've counseled couples through the most is their finances. And it comes from them not really being 100% honest with each other. It's about like how they spend their money, how they budget, how they spend on credit. And it's like, wait, you bought what? You charged what? You did this? And obviously communication eliminates a lot of that, but you have to have an honest conversation, even in the small things, even if it hurts a little bit, that protects you from those bigger things later down the road.
If you want a good gauge of how honest you're being with your spouse, hand them your phone.
It's huge.
Say, go at it, go through it, and see how you feel.
Yeah, I've got friends, and look, you know, I've got friends out there, and I love you, and you've got healthy marriages, and you're doing great and stuff like that, but who have like separate bank accounts and separate things like that, and like are really careful with their spouse seeing their phone and who they text and everything like that. In my opinion, that's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely.
You know, it's just really difficult, man, to really do life with as a partner, as like, hey, we're equals, we're in this together, two coming together to be one. You need to share everything.
Yep.
You need to share everything. You need to do everything together. And it doesn't, man, to me, it doesn't like make me feel captured. It makes me feel liberated because I ain't got nothing to hide.
Exactly.
We're doing it together.
Yeah.
We're doing it together. And so that leads us to our third attitude that you should take on to have a healthy relationship, healthy marriage. And it's, I love you for who you are, not what you do. You know, I was thinking about this. I could go a lot of different directions with it, but I got to keep it brief. And it really comes down to your definition of love, right? Like love is based or defined for many people as convenience and performance and what you do for me. But love in a marriage is about a covenant. You know, it's about a commitment that was made. And that's why I talked about earlier that it's foundational for me, that the reason that we're able to show that love is because the love that Jesus first gave us. But it's I love you because I'm committed to you, not what you can do for me.
Right.
It's our vows, you know, that you love each other in sickness and in health, for richer or poor, in good and bad, until death do us part.
Yep.
You know, and I think for some people, that kind of like, they feel like it lessens the love, but it lessens the love when you make it about a commitment and not feelings. But if anything, it strengthens it.
Yeah.
It's to say that even when I don't feel it, I'm still going to choose to love you.
For sure.
Right.
This kind of goes back to your rom-com example of like, I mean, they're always put together in those movies. They don't make any mistakes. They don't have any quirks. Like, you know, a hard part of getting married is when you move into with each other.
Yep.
Unless you've done that before, but like you start to see, they live a little differently than I.
Yep.
I'm a little dirtier than they are.
That's right.
Or they do weird things while they eat, like just little stuff like that.
Yep.
But obviously
And
that's
even
not
in
why
the rom-com, it all follows the same plot where they hit that one point and it's like a big thing pops up and you're like, oh, they're not going to make it and they're going to break up. And it's like, but that little break or that little issue ends up becoming, you know, the thing that realizes that they need to stay together about, and they all figure it out, you know, but it's just, it's not about, okay, you're performing for me, you're doing well for me, so I'm going to love you, because there's going to be times in marriage where it's not 50-50.
Yeah.
Right. There's going to be plenty of times where, you know, it's just where the other person can't give that 50. And maybe they can only give 20. So you're going to have to fill in that gap, and you're going to have to do that 80. And I want to be clear, though, that this isn't an excuse to just behave however you want to behave and then just say, oh, my spouse has got to make up the gap. Right. And it's definitely not an excuse for abuse. That's unexcusable. But what I'm trying to do, or what I'm trying to make the point about I love you for who you are, not what you do, is that we love our spouse unconditionally.
Yep.
We love them unconditionally, and I'm so thankful for plenty of times where Courtney loved me even when I didn't deserve it, and I'm sure where she didn't feel it. You know, because there's plenty of mornings like you've heard before that you wake up and you don't feel it, but you still have to choose. Yep. And this is in everything in life, and it's about our commitments. Like there's plenty of times where our feelings, we can't follow our feelings. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the same for staying in shape. It's the same for building a business. It's the same for raising kids. It's the same for a marriage. We can't let our feelings follow. We have to make decisions and commit and follow through with them, and then our feelings will come behind.
Yeah. And a lot of that too goes into your expectations of marriage
and
the person. Like if you're expecting to marry a perfect person or find the perfect person, you're going to be let down.
Right.
There's no perfect person. You are not perfect.
Right.
So you probably shouldn't have that standard for somebody else.
Right.
But yeah, that's clutch.
Right.
The fourth and final attitude to have, guys, this may be a little more geared towards you. I give up my right to be right.
Definitely for the guys out there.
Right? I give up my right to be right.
Yeah.
But seriously, like when you were in an argument, the goal should not be just to be right. This is for a lot of hard-headed people out there that just have to prove themselves. Think about if you were in the opposite end of the conversation and you were being proved wrong. Like, do you say, you know what, you're right. Good for you. Like, no,
I feel so much better now.
You feel bad. You know, you feel like, all right, well. So in a sense, like you think you won, did you really win, or did you both just lose, or did you just lose? Like you can't have that mindset. And you know, we have some friends who, when they were building a house, they were starting to pick out some furniture, and the wife had opinions on like what style. And he was just so hard-headed and had to like have his hand in everything. And I'm like, what is that? Like, why are you choosing these? You don't have to be right in saying, well, this color wouldn't work. I'm just like, there's some things that you really don't need to be right about.
It's really
a lot of things you don't need to be right about.
It's really picking and choosing your battles, for sure.
Pick the things, if you have to pick, like, don't pick to be right. Pick to discuss and go further and dig deep into having a discussion.
That's right. If it's an argument where like somebody feels like they won, then both of you actually lose.
Right. And if we have the mindset of like, hey, marriage is all about just proving that we can be selfless and loving through something, then you don't need to be right. I've seen plenty of memes where I was like, I finally won an argument with my wife, and there's like a picture of them laying on the couch because the wife's mad. You know, your goal is not to be right. Your goal is to work through things together.
That's right.
And not have to have that hard-headed, closed-minded stuff.
That's right. And like, as we start to wrap this up, like we started with, is that good things take work. But for some reason, you may not be thinking this, but you've kind of put your marriage to the back burner and you've stopped working on it, right? Like, keep dating your spouse. Keep serving your spouse. Surprise them. One of my favorite things to do is just to do little surprises, little things that Courtney wouldn't expect. And, this is something that I just want to touch on before we get done, is that married people can still be lonely, right? Like, just because you spend time together, are you spending quality time together? Courtney and I have to check ourselves on that, especially after a long day. And it's like, man, the boys wouldn't go down easy. And it's like, we're getting to bed a lot later than we wanted to. And then we sit in bed and we're right next to each other, but are we actually together?
Right.
Is she on her phone and I'm on my phone? Are we watching two different shows? Or are we together?
Right.
Married people can still be lonely. Put down your phone. It's not worth it, right, to neglect what you have right there with you for whatever's on the phone, right? And I think this is an important thing to feel, is that a lot of times we feel like we're deserving of more from our spouse, so we don't end up giving. Man, if you feel like you're lacking something from your spouse, my challenge for you is that you invest in the way that you feel like you need to be receiving with your spouse, and let's see if it just starts to change.
Absolutely.
In just before Rhett closes it out, next week you definitely don't want to miss, because we're going to be doing a whole episode on how to improve your sex life.
Whoa. No, we are not. We are not doing that.
Okay.
Maybe on the OnlyFans account. Yeah.
I'm totally kidding. I kind of threw him a curveball there.
But such serious
handled
face.
that well. That was pretty good.
Such serious face.
I'd like to watch that one back, because I got real uncomfortable saying it and just staring into the camera and saying that.
He was really deep, and all of a sudden he said, I was like, is he serious?
No, we're not going to do that.
No,
we're not going
to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully this was a kind of a reminder for you in your marriage. Being in real estate, we're often we're often the first to know about failing marriages because they have to do something with their real estate. And that every time I hear that, it gives me this like overwhelming sense of, I gotta just go home and spend time with Brandy.
Yeah.
And I don't like that I have to wait for those things to happen to feel that sometimes.
Yeah.
So hopefully this podcast can be a little spark for you and remind you to love your spouse well and to have these attitudes in mind.
Yeah. Before you wrap up, that's the reason that we do this. Like, I was talking to somebody the other day and they're like, well, what is this? Like, sometimes the episodes, we talk about a lot of different things here on House Dads. Right. And the reason is because you have a lot of different stuff going on. And so what we want to do is know that, like, it's not that we just improve in one area of our life. A lot of times, man, when we're improving in all the areas of our lives, a rising tide rises all ships, right? And so we want to rise the tide in our life, in our marriages, in our businesses, as parents, as everything, so that all of our stuff can come up. And so we just want the same for you. So that's why we're going to cover the whole gambit and talk about all of it.
Yes, sir. Well, hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope it gave you a little spark, like we said. Thank you so much for watching. Don't be shy on social media. Give us a follow. Give us a like. Share our stuff. And we're just honored that you gave us some of your time. 26 minutes of your time?
Something like that.
Something like that. But yeah, tune in next episode. We got another great topic for you. Let us know what you want to hear about as well. And we'll see you next episode.
See ya.